All right. Well, welcome. On behalf of Netwoven, we'd like to welcome you to Nintex Workflow Cloud. We've got a couple different topics. You want to go to the next slide? So I'm Walter Petras, Operating Officer of Netwoven, and I'll be the facilitator for today's presentation. A few comments about logistics for today's webinar. We have a great speaker and a lot of content to cover in 50 minutes. We'll do our best to answer your questions throughout the presentation, or we'll post our answers in our blog. If you have any questions or issues, please look at the upper right corner of your screen, and you should see the GoToWebinar control panel. In that panel, you can post questions by typing the lower right box, or click the hand to raise any issues. Next slide. Just a quick note about Netwoven. We're a full-service technology consulting firm serving Fortune 1000 companies. We're founded in 2001. We're lucky to recruit some great consultants from many industries and technology firms. We feel fortunate to work with many of these firms highlighted in the slide and on the call today. Thank you for your continued business. A quick highlight of our services. Netwoven has been a leading Nintex Platinum partner and many other solutions, which we'll highlight some today. We've also been very involved in the growing field of Office 365 solutions, big data visualization, and integrated digital marketing and CRM. Some pretty cool tools are making these solutions possible to a broader audience. We hope to help you with your solution needs as you go forward. Next slide. We're very fortunate to have Alex Viera present today, talk a little bit about the Nintex solutions. He's our Nintex solution architect, and I'll hand over to Alex.
Great. Thank you, Walt. Hey, I wanted to thank everyone for your time today. I know you're on busy schedules and your time is valuable, so I really want to make sure that I get you as much information as possible about Nintex Workflow Cloud today. As you can see, I'm a Nintex solution architect at Netwoven. That's all I focus on is Nintex solutions. And one of the things that I really wanted to point out here as far as why Netwoven is a #1 premier partner with Nintex is because we really go the extra mile to make sure that we don't sell you a product and just walk away. So as you can see at the bottom, one of our big things here is having almost every one of our customers is a customer reference. So if you think about moving forward, you can get a hold of us and we can put you in contact with some of our customers. So today what I wanted to talk about is when you're looking at everyday processes, and these are the kinds of things that are the small ones that you're seeing on the screen right now that end up using time and money, people's time and money, because you're doing things all the time. And a lot of these types of flows that you end up doing, or business tasks you end up doing, they take 15 or 20 minutes. But when you start multiplying that times everyone in your company, you can see that by doing and automating a lot of these situations where you might be pushing paper or you might be doing email attachments, that Nintex can really save you this time and money. So just looking back at the platform before we talk about what we're going to, before we talk about Nintex Workflow Cloud, I just wanted to let you know that when you look at Nintex and the maturity of the platform, there's basically 4 pillars here. The one thing about these first 2 pillars was they were very SharePoint centric. So Office 365, SharePoint on-premise, there's a lot of things that we could do with workflow and forms, and they've built on 10 years of knowledge to be able to produce this next generation of cloud workflow. So what I wanted to just paint the picture here is this is not something where they just threw it out the wall and hope it would work. They were kind of looking at what the competitive landscape was all about, but more importantly was actually taking a look at what are the problems that people are trying to solve within their organization. So this is where when we take a look at this next slide, where we're dealing with a whole different breed of solutions that we need to build, and a lot of it comes from if you look at the lower end of this slide right here, is having to integrate with a bunch of different services. So we have software as a service, and we're utilizing a lot of different applications to be able to build our solutions. And this presents a challenge for us because when you take a look at some companies, you might have different divisions in your companies that are not using SharePoint, And in a lot of situations in the past, you'd look at Nintex saying you're not a player in this space. But that's all been changed. And through the evolution and revolution of a lot of the things that Nintex has done, we've been able to take these business processes and move them into the cloud. And what I'm going to cover today is the Nintex Workflow Cloud, or known as NWC. So I'll use that acronym, so just so I'm not having to say Nintex Workflow Cloud over and over again. So basic pillars of NWC here is giving you the ability to design at the speed of thought using a designer that's based in the browser. So when we actually take a look at the product and I build some workflows for you and show you some ones that I've built, I think you're going to see that this is not the type of situation where you need a developer to be able to do these kinds of business processes. And you'll see that, and if you're familiar with Nintex at all, you know that it's not a developer's platform in the sense that we're not having to write code. You're dragging and dropping, and you're being able to do some really sophisticated stuff without having to write a single line of code. So Nintex Workflow Cloud, or NWC, also gives us connectivity, so we can connect to a bunch of different systems and be event-driven. So that means that externally we can have different processes that actually trigger a workflow to run, whether that's some hardware device, if you're dealing with some hardware, or some other software where you might be trying to initiate something to happen and connect a bunch of systems together as part of a solution. And again, this is all built on Azure, cloud optimized, multiple tenant. And the biggest thing I want you to walk away from here is this is completely platform independent. So we do not require SharePoint to be installed on-premise or Office 365. All these workflows you build are actually running in the cloud, and we're going to show you some pretty cool things here. So let me talk about some of the high-level key features here. Again, I reemphasize the fact that it's platform agnostic, so we don't have to worry about SharePoint. If you do have SharePoint, that's even better. I'm going to show you some solutions today where we can actually take advantage of using forms from Nintex Forms just as an input to be able to kick off a workflow. But when we're designing the workflows, again, this is browser-based, works in pretty much every browser to be able to drag and drop, so there's no tools to install. All we need to do is log in to our URL into a secure website and be able to build these workflows. And we have the ability to have participant interaction, whether this is human interaction through doing an email approval, or we can do stuff where other applications can actually trigger the workflows to run. As far as connectors go, I'm going to show you the list of connectors. Even in the slide deck that was produced I'd say about 3 weeks ago, the list has grown tremendously. So what you're going to see with this product, and especially since it's cloud-based, is Nintex is really putting in an effort to make sure that they can connect to everything. And I think you're going to see this list grow and grow, and it's really going to be a great thing for everybody. Some of the things that we get is we can look at workflow lists and instances and tasks, and I'm going to show that to you in the product and as we go through here. So let me kind of show you what the designer looks like. Again, we're using this browser-based drag and drop environment. It's very, I would say it's very slick and very responsive as far as the things you can do. And I think what you'll like about this is the simplicity. For being able to do some pretty sophisticated things, you can actually go in there and configure a workflow in a matter of minutes. This is not something where you're writing code and it takes weeks to do. We can actually do it pretty quick. If you take a look at this workflow on the right-hand side, we're starting a workflow based on someone dropping a file into Box. That's the trigger for this workflow. Then we go in there and we can send an email approval to someone, and they can reply through that email, either yes or no, or approve or denied, and then based on what they respond, we can actually follow the other paths here. So we can copy a file and then send a notification to that person, or delete a file. So a bunch of different types of things we can do. This is just touching the tip of the iceberg here. In this situation that I was just kind of showing you here, on the left-hand side, and we'll go through this in the actual product, is the ability to have logic and flow, different types of operations, integration with different different systems if we want to just make web service calls. But you can see this list on the left right here, and this is not a comprehensive list. I'll show it to you in the product, but we're dragging and dropping. Here's another situation where if you take a look where my cursor is, let me bring up a laser pointer here. Right here, we're moving a file to an approved folder in Box. So when you click on this and you say to configure, this window comes up on the right-hand side. So you're telling it the path, you're telling it where you want to be able to connect to, what Dropbox or what box are we connecting to, Dropbox, and then who we are as far as a member and where we actually want to store the information. One cool thing here is that they actually update a Salesforce record, so Salesforce.com integration as well. And also over here, if you look at Twilio, on the left-hand side, maybe we want to be able to send a text notification. So again, you're looking at being able to have this comprehensive solution that's bringing together a bunch of different cloud offerings. We can also look at the workflows and what's running. So this is one of the features of the product when we're looking at the context of what's going on. So I can see the activity, how many I've published, how many I have total, which ones are in development, which ones are production. We can also go in there and start them manually for testing. So doing simulations where we have maybe 5 inputs, I can start one, it'll prompt me for all the inputs, I can run it and test it as well. Having a view of all the instances that are running to find out what's going on and what state they're in on the right-hand side, whether they failed or completed. So this again is giving you a comprehensive view of what's going on and being able to really identify, like they say here, any workflows that might be having issues. Maybe you didn't pay for your DocuSign, maybe your DocuSign subscription has lapsed and for some reason your integration with DocuSign is failing. You go and take a look, and that would give us the ability to go in there and debug and find out what's going on. Also looking from an administrator point of view of all the tasks that you sent to people and what the outcome was. This is a situation where we're doing approvals, we're asking for yes or no, or as it depicts here on the slide, always having the ability to override and say, you know what, something happened with this workflow, someone didn't respond, so we're going to automatically decline it or possibly just override it and approve it. So we have that capability. I talked about being able to do approvals. So this is a great thing. If you're a Nintex person, you're familiar with Nintex lazy approvals. What this basically does is it gives you a way to respond to a task and say that I'm either approving or rejecting it. So you basically get a yes-no path based on the user responding and say, you know, I approve or disapprove or yes or no. And we can do this all on a mobile device or just, you know, any device that has email on it, and then we can respond to that business decision. We can actually do stuff with forms, so I'm going to show you a couple examples of what you can do out of the box. Some of the things that we end up doing out of the box are very vanilla right now, but what they're going to do in the future is give you a designer. If you happen to have Nintex on-premise, you can actually create a very custom form and have that form take the input from the user. Once the user hits submit, you can trigger a workflow to run in the cloud. So you have that ability to be able to take any input device that you have, whether it be a piece of piece of hardware where you're just making an HTTPS call, or you can actually do that through a form. So even we can initiate a workflow through a form, a custom one, a Nintex form, or any other device. So there's some really unique things we can do here. Out of the box, you can actually have your workflow initiated from an input from a mobile device as well. So again, not having to rely on anything with SharePoint on-premise related, we can actually push our forms to a Nintex mobile application, which, by the way, is a free download. If you were to look on your phone in the store, you would see that you have the ability to do a free download of Nintex Mobile. Once you publish the form in Nintex Mobile and you hit submit, that will actually kick off your workflow and start running it. So again, some really unique things that you can do there with this product. Now, let me talk about the extensibility. There's a lot of different things that you can do as far as your workflow design. So when you think about having branches that have if-else or a switch statement that actually says, you know, if this value coming in should go down this branch, this is what it's kind of showing you on the right-hand side. We're branching by value. So someone inputted some data, or we got a call to initiate this workflow. We actually wanted to run down a specific path based on that input, so we can do that using this. So on the left-hand side, you know, we can communicate with different applications, different third-party applications. We have the logic and flow for doing these if-else type of situations, and a bunch of different types of operations on the data. So when we're collecting data, let's say that part of our workflow goes out and goes to SQL Server and does a query. Maybe I want to take that data that's come back and work on it record by record. So these are the things that we can do in what's called a collection, which collects data. And then again, having the integration to any pretty much any back-end system that we want to. So this slide, as far as connecting, having the SaaS connectors out of the box, I'll go through that whole list with you, what's currently there. But you know, these were some of the top ones about a month ago. Now this list has grown tremendously, and as people start giving the input to Nintex, they will keep on adding those. So you'll see it's a very comprehensive list, and there's very few things that you can't communicate with. And the great thing here is that they've also added one action item that you can drag and drop, one control that you can drag and drop, and it gives you the ability to call any web service. So even though these are built out of the box to make your life a lot easier, you can communicate with systems that are not in this list easily by using some of the HTTP connectors for calling web services. So you have the connection manager. This is also a way of being able to figure out what you're connecting to. It also gives you some context. So when you're connecting to a bunch of different back-end systems in the connection list, you can actually create some names around it. So if you're connecting to a couple different tenancies within some software, you can actually go in there and make sure that you're connecting to the right one and distinguish it by a name, and we'll cover that as well. So there's this new concept called workflow as a service. So one of the great things about Nintex is this new thing called workflow as a service, which is trademarked. The whole ability here is having this API layer. So when we talk about building workflows for the cloud, we want to have a robust system where we can interrogate and find out what can we call, let's get the details, let's be able to call the workflow and instantiate it. Let's also be able to call and find out what's going on. So remember that in a situation where you're running a workflow in the cloud, you're going to have this ability, or you want this ability, to know when things have happened. So you might want to call back. So on the right-hand side, we have notify caller, that some task has been completed. We also want to get the workflow status so that our third-party application that we're building can actually show the user what's going on, because remember, we're not relying on SharePoint here, and this is a workflow that's running in the cloud, so we need some way to be able to interrogate the workflow as a service so that anything you publish, we can actually get the information, get the details, execute, get status, and know when things are done. So this is pretty much what the workflow as a service provides for you. And the great thing about this, if you think about it, you can create a great solution, and then what you can do is you can actually reuse that information. So in a situation, let's say that you have some kind of workflow that's running. We can have one main workflow in the center that's actually calling out to other workflows to do some work and bring some information back. And this makes sense regardless of what workflow engine you're using here in the center, because with having this workflow as a service, we can make the calls to these different cloud workflows without having to worry about the platform as we were describing before. And we can have these workflows, if we're doing an approval workflow, tell us and call us back and let us know when it's done so we can move on to the next stage. So a bunch of different cool things you can do, and it really changes the model for how your business might interact with different companies. So when you look at different companies, you might have a situation where they want to make a call and get information from you into their system and integrate with you. So by exposing these workflows to these different partners or different applications, you can reuse a lot of these workflows that might be packaged in a way that they can be reused for multiple clients to take advantage of. So when we talk about multiple clients or multiple partners, we're talking about different applications within the firewall, different applications outside of the firewall, and even applications that might be a firmware application. So when you look about integrating with a piece of hardware, like I said previously, even if you have a piece of hardware like a Raspberry Pi, where you might be doing something like sensing temperature or some kind of input from a user, we can actually make a call that will go back and run our workflow based on that. So if a temperature in the refrigerator gets below or gets too high above freezing where everything's going to melt in this production freezer, maybe we want to have a workflow that's going to send some messages to some people and notify them that things are going to happen. So a lot of cool things to do there. And this kind of goes towards that, any product or custom application that I was just kind of mentioning, but being able to call the workflow as a service and get that information. So let me go ahead and jump into the product, and then we'll take a look at the things that can be done here. And let me go ahead and end this slideshow, and let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things we could do. So I've got some things set up here that I wanted to show you. I created an opportunity in CRM that we're actually going to make some modifications and watch some things happen. So first off, what I wanted to do was kind of give you a roundabout look of here's what the interface looks like. When you log in to NWC, Nintex Workflow Cloud, this is what you see. It's a very simple interface. We have a couple menu items here at the top where we can switch back and forth between the dashboard view that you have. We can switch to a designer to actually start a new workflow. We also have different settings that we have here where we can go in and see our tenancy. We also have the ability to manage users, so I might want to add some other people that are going to be either a designer, administrator, or have the ability to access Nintex Mobile and do different things. So again, this is your way of being able to figure out who within your organization has the ability to basically administer or design these different workflows. So let me go ahead and then show you some stuff here on the left-hand side. Here is the first item that's highlighted here. These are all the workflows I created, and we're going to go through each one of these scenarios just to give you a flavor of what can be done. So we have this. We can also look at all the instances that are currently running. So all my instances that I ran previously have been completed, but if I had anything outstanding, I'd be able to go in here and take a look at what's going on. The great thing is if we take a look at this workflow, which I ran just minutes ago, you can see that the action items, as they're being executed, gives you a sequence of the activities that had happened, so we can see if there's any failure here, and we can see when was the workflow initiated, when it was actually finished, and actually have some workflow details. If anything should go wrong, I can actually click up here and create a support ticket with Nintex so that we can get things resolved in case there's an issue that we're not aware of or we can't figure it out. Another thing too we have over here is the ability to do searching for tasks. So I can go up here and say what are the things that have happened and completed from the 6th of December until the 29th, which is far off. But anyway, the whole ability here is to generate a report and be able to look and see what basically happened. The big things you want to see are who completed what task, what are some of the things as far as what was initiated, what was the outcome. In this situation, they were all approved, but we can have some that are not approved as well. I don't know if I have any of those date completed, but I don't have any. I approved everything that went through. And the last thing here is the connections. So remember I was telling you before, we need to have a way to communicate with the different systems that we want to communicate with. So one of the things that we do here is we have all these different connectors here. And remember I was telling you there's a more extensive list than I was showing you in the slides. Here's the full list, and I want to caveat this with the fact that these connectors are going to grow on a month-to-month basis because as we get input As Nintex receives input from the users as far as what they want to connect to, like I said, they will respond to that. But you can see that we can connect to a lot of these out of the box. And another thing too is I mentioned that if you don't see something here that you want to connect to, chances are you can use the HTTP connector to make a web service call and be able to do that. So this is just a simpler way to be able to do that. But once we go in here, we go in and create a DocuSign connector. We put in the, whether we're production or sandbox, the username and the password, and then it'll actually try to connect. And once it does connect, then we'll have that down below. So you can see I have a SQL Server connection and a CRM connection, and I'm going to show you how those are used. Okay. Same thing like here. If I wanted to connect, a very common one when we look at Salesforce.com is connecting to Salesforce. So you'd give it your endpoint address. And then you'd want you to supply your password and everything. That would end up showing up in your list, so then from here on you can use that connection. But remember, since we're building for the cloud, we could be talking to different tenants, so this is one of the reasons we want to have the right connection with the right connection name, so we know that we're pushing and pulling information to the right area. Okay? So first off, let's go ahead and see what it's like to create a workflow, so when I'm showing you my examples, you'll have a good understanding of what's going on there. So here we're starting right off from fresh, and this is what you would see. The first thing we're going to have is a start event, and then the last thing that's going to happen is the workflow completes at the bottom. On the left-hand side, going through, being able to do an express approval. This is something for like I was saying, where they can say yes or no, sending an email notification, but also look at some of the things like I was talking about with integration. Maybe I want to call a web service because what I want to connect with doesn't exist down below. We have Salesforce and CRM and a lot of these down below, but if I have something else like, let's say, weatherunderground.com, part of your workflow might go out and search for the forecast for an area that someone might be traveling to. So what you'd use is you drag and drop this web service call, and you come in here and configure it. So when you click on this and hit configure, you'd actually put in the URL, what type of requests that you're making, and then the request headers and the content. But again, this is a lower level call, but again, you have the ability to pretty much talk to any web service that exists that's been exposed on the internet. And then once it returns the value, you can actually take and query using this query JSON. We can actually go in and figure out, like, here's the source that's been collected from the web service. Now I want to parse that data and put the results somewhere. So that's how you'd basically use these two in conjunction together. Okay? Now, I got a little bit ahead of myself. What I wanted to do was show you, how does a workflow even start? So let me show you the options that happen up here. Basically what you end up using is some of the connectors, and based on the different connectors, you can see that we can do a bunch of different things. So if I was going to connect with Salesforce.com, I could select the different types of events. So these are the two events that I can trigger on. So I can say anytime a new record's created or anytime a record is updated, I want this workflow to run. And the cool thing about it is, once you go in here and select your connection, it's going to give you all your entities and then the attributes for you to select from. So whenever a new record is created in Salesforce, I can tell it, these are the different fields that I want to have available to me when this workflow instantiates. And I'm going to show you that with my CRM instance that I created. But this is just one connector. Every connector is a little bit different. Let's take a look at Dropbox. What are the things I can do with Dropbox? Well, anytime someone creates a new folder or someone drops a file into a Dropbox, I can actually have the workflow kick off and do that. Why would you want to do that? Sales orders, purchase orders, some kind of document that needs to be signed through DocuSign might have to go through this, and someone drops a file into a location. Once they do that, we will actually have this workflow instantiated automatically, and we can pull back all the information that we want. Okay. Let me show you some other ones here. Let's go to Nintex, because Nintex is an interesting one. Now, these are specific towards Nintex Workflow Cloud. and also on-premise and Office 365. So here's the cool thing. When you select Nintex, here are all your different options. We can start from a Nintex Mobile application. We can start from a public web form. So again, not having to have anything related to on-premise. If we have a public web form, I can actually have, when you hit submit on that public web form, we can have it instantiate this workflow to run. So not having to write any code or CGI code or anything, ASP code that sits behind a form, I can just have a form that submits and it'll instantiate this workflow. I can also do an external start, which means I want to have some other application just calling directly to this web service using HTTP and using an actual REST call, or I can do a scheduled start. So I can say that I want this workflow to run every hour. I want it to run once a week. This workflow maybe needs to go and do something and collect a bunch of documents from Dropbox and actually filter out where they should go to and route those documents. So a lot of different things, you just let your imagination go here as far as what we could do. So let's say that in this situation with Nintex, I wanted to do something like someone submits some data. Let's say, actually, let's do a simple one. Let's do a dynamic CRM, and I'll choose my record here. Whenever we get something like a new record out of CRM, I want to use this connection called my CRM connection, and notice it's going to load here. It's connecting to my actual CRM instance, and I can select what I want to get. What data do I want to get from my CRM instance? I'm just going to select one, and then what it's going to do is it's going to ask me for all the attributes that I want. So I can take the attachment, number, body, whatever, and do that. So once I select some values, you can see that these values are going to be passed through to my workflow, right? When I close that, now when we get a new record in Dynamics, now I want to have some cool things happen. I might do something like I might say, you know what, and up here on the left I can search for something. I could say I want to execute a query against SQL, and once we get that, and you can see I can configure this. I can use a connection to SQL Server. I can put my insert, update, delete code in here, what columns I want to retrieve, and whatever I want to return here, okay? And what I can do from that is I can actually come along and say, okay, after that happens, I want to actually have some logic and I want to branch based on some condition. So based on some condition, I might have a condition here that I might say, maybe I select the value here, and I'm just going to choose this, and I could say maybe that was some value like an estimated revenue, and I can say, well, if the estimated revenue is greater than some value or equals some value, I could say if it's equal to 10,000 or greater than or whatever, I could put that in there. And once it goes down this path, then I might want to do something like this. I might want to say, well, I want to pick up a standard document. So what I want to do is I actually want to send out something like creating another entity inside of CRM. So we look for CRM. We can actually update a record. So I might want to update a record. I might want to send an email to somebody to let them know that we've actually updated this. And then I might want to have a situation where we go in there and based on some manager's approval, we might have something that says, we're going to do something else here. So we'd have this express approval that we can put in here. And as you can see here, whether this person approves or denies, if we go down the approval path, maybe we ended up sending it to DocuSign. So we go into DocuSign, we want to go get a signature from somebody. After that, it's been approved by our manager. So if you take a look and if you know anything with DocuSign, you can have three outcomes. It's either declined to sign, it's been completed or voided. If it has been completed, maybe the next thing we want to do is get a signature to get that document and download that document. And then what we can tell DocuSign is where we want to put that document and store that in a certain path. So we can make a connection to like something like Dropbox and drop this signed document into a folder. So as you can see, we have a very robust types of situations we can do. Let's go ahead and jump out of this now that you kind of get a feel for what we can do. And in this situation, we would publish this and it would become live at that point. So let me take you through some of these scenarios that I've actually want to show you. So the first one I want to show you, we'll take a look at doing a public form. So this public form actually goes through and just sends an email based on filling out a public form. And if we go back to this form, I can actually look at the URL, the public URL, and copy that URL. If you're quick enough to write that down, you'd have access to this too. But I could actually go in there and type in that URL. And here's a generic form that comes in here. I can put in my name, Alex V. Hang on. And I'll put in, just for a company, I'll put in a bunch of X's. So once I submit this, what's actually going to happen is if we were to go back here to the workflows and look at the instances, you'll see that this one probably happened really quickly. So it happened so quickly you barely could see what was going on. But if you saw that workflow, you could see the only thing I did is I sent an email notification to allow you to know that we received that, just to show you we're making a full round trip from a web-based, internet-based form that's coming all the way through and instantiating our workflow to run, okay? Let me go ahead and, when that email comes through, I'll actually show it to you. Let me see if it's come up yet. So here's that information that we sent. So Nintex Cloud generated this. This was my message. Here, I was able to create a dynamic message with the company name, and then also using that other information. So you see we made a full round trip all the way back from filling out that form. So the other way I can do this, here's a Nintex Mobile form, and in this situation we do an express approval. So I'm asking for an approval, and if we get an approval from that person, I'm actually going to send them some information about Nintex Workflow Cloud, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at this, and this form is automatically generated for you. So here's Nintex Mobile. Like I said, it's a free downloadable application. Here's that form when I published that actually became live in this application. So this will work on any device, any tablet, any mobile device, doesn't matter what brand or what make. But I can come in here and I'm going to put in some other name. I'm going to put in a bunch of Z's. I'll put in Alex V at Netwoven again, so we get that email sent to me and doesn't bother anyone. And then the company will be ZINC. So I hit submit on that, and now we've actually submitted that. So you're looking at my actual cell phone right here, and what will happen is this will take about a minute to go through. It's actually going to go through, and what we'll see in a minute is I should get this workflow to show me an express approval, and it's going to say this. It's going to say, I've configured this to say, please approve or reject this. Do we have your permission to send some information? So here's the email that came through, and now I'm going to go through and I'm going to say approve and just send it. So now that I've done that, what's going to happen is if you look at express approval, if we go down this path, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to send an email. So it's going to say hi, whatever name we put in, and notice I'm using the fields that were passed in through the form, right? So we'll see that come through in a minute and have the ability to see this workflow run to completion, okay? Now, while we're waiting for that, let me go ahead and show you some other things here. Actually, it came through. It's working quicker than I thought. So here was the company name. Here's the name that I put at the top, and here's the body of the message that was sent through. So again, here was your interface to a mobile device kicking off a workflow to be able to run. We can go and take a look at the instances here again. So you can see that this instance ran. You'll notice here's the things that executed. We executed a task. This task was completed in a minute, within the same minute, and then we sent an email, which was exactly what we ended up doing in this Nintex Mobile demonstration here. Here's one task here's a second task. So we can follow exactly the flow of the workflow, okay? All right, so the next one I wanted to do is I actually created a site here in on-premise, and I have something here where I can go in and I can fill out a form. So let's use a different letter here. Let's go with all D's here, and I'm going to put in Alex V at Netwoven again, and I'm going to say submit here. And one of the things you're going to see is that if I hit F5, we actually have a workflow that's in progress. Well, this is a very simple workflow, but I just wanted to show you the integration from an on-premise instance of Nintex calling to the cloud and actually having it do something. So this is how it's actually set up. The workflow is meant to run whenever some new item is created. This is an on-premise workflow that runs. What I'm using is a Nintex Workflow Cloud NWC start action. When I drag and drop this start action over here, I can go and configure it, right, to make the call. So you have to give it some information here to figure out what parameters are required, okay? So how do I do that? Let's take a look at this workflow. Let me bring this up here. We're doing an external start. So here's our external start. It's just a very simple one that sends an email. This is a very simple workflow. We're doing an external start. We want the email text name and the full name. Those are what we require to be able to run. So how does on-premise or any other application know to pass these parameters here? Let me show you that. If we go back and take a look at this, this entry, over on the right-hand side, I can actually get, actually that's not it, it's this one here. We can actually get the external start URL. So I'm going to copy the external start URL and use that. And this external start URL uses something called Swagger. If you're not familiar with Swagger, it's a specification that basically tells you everything that this workflow exposes. So remember, we talked about workflow as a service. By using Swagger, you can actually call the URL and ask it, what do you require as far as an input? But let's say you don't use Swagger. What you can also do is you can use down below is make a REST call. So that's why you have these other options to be able to make the call. I'm going to use this Swagger because when we take a look at the workflow designer, it's built to use Swagger. So I just paste that URL in here, I say connect, and it automatically knows how I want to populate this information. So the workflow in the cloud is requiring an email string and a full text name. How do I link the data together? So what I do is I basically come in here and I say from my form that's been in the list, I want to have the email and I want the full name of the person that was actually filled out the information. So here's full name. Remember, these are our two inputs that we had. And once I say save to that, this will actually work. So what was the outcome of that email? Here's that first entry I had and says this workflow was started from Nintex on-prem, okay? So remember where we started from. Let me go back here and show you where we started from. And you can see that when I hit F5 and look at the update here, it should say completed, and we completed it. So here was that DDD, here was that information, and we can go and look at this workflow and basically get an idea of what path did it take and what it actually did. So looking at the completed workflow here, you can see that we can figure out what had actually happened, and we did an external start and made that happen. Okay. All right, let's keep on going. I'm going to make this better and better for you. So here's a CRM. We're sitting here in Dynamics. I had the revenue wrong. I actually made the revenue wrong. Let's say that the revenue was actually only 5,000, and then I got to go in the lower right and save that and update that. So we're sitting here in our live Dynamics environment, and what I want to be able to do is have a cloud workflow that can integrate with this to be able to do something. So this is the workflow here that I created just to kind of show you a couple things. The first thing was that the start event is based on an update of a record, and then the value I was interested in collecting from the entity was an estimated revenue. So that's the only thing I cared about. But again, I could have added a lot of different things. I could have gone down and said, oh, I want to know who the account manager was. I want to know what the budget amount was. These are all things that if I put that in there, I would be able to pass and use farther on down in the workflow, okay? So one thing I want to point out here is that I just took the liberty to show you some cool stuff. I wanted to make a query to a live SQL Server. So in this SQL Server, what I basically did is I did a select statement. I concatenated 3 columns together. I stored that information in 2 places. I stored how many columns were received as a count, and also the data, the raw data has been put into a collection. And then in the email, what I basically do is I come in here and I take the estimated revenue, how many query results we got, and the results, and I send those back. Okay, so that was just creating a dynamic email to kind of show all this stuff that's going on in here. So essentially what will happen is, and it'll come through in a minute, when this is updated, it'll actually send us the email notifying us and that we did all this things that I basically put into this workflow. Okay? Okay. Let me show you another one while we're waiting for that one to come through. There was another one that I have here that's basically updated when a new event, that was an update event. This one is a 2-level approval for a CRM opportunity update. Notice I have this one paused because I didn't want things running all the time since I'm using our production CRM. But let me just kind of show you what this workflow does. This will show you how you can do a multi-level approval. So using something called a stage, which allows us to do multiple levels. I'm just showing 2 levels, but we could do 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 levels or more of approval. And you can see that what happens is the first branch we come down, when we update a record, it actually goes to first level approval. We send it to one person. They can approve it. If they can reject it, and we send an email and we exit, or they can approve it. And then I'm saying, after this is done, go to the next approver. So we jump to the next approver, which is approver number 2, and this person can make an approval or rejection through an email. And basically, we send an email if they reject it. We send an approval email if they've accepted it, and then the workflow completes. But what's really cool about this is that we're not just talking about simplistic serial events. In this situation, we could add more to it. Let's say that we wanted to add a 3rd level approver. So we can go in here and configure, and I could say, you know what, I need to have a 3rd level branch, and I could call it final approval. And when I put that in there, what's going to happen is it adds this other branch that we can go in here and basically do anything we want to. We could go in there and say, you know what, final approval, we go ahead and create a record inside of CRM, and then maybe we're going to copy a file from Google Drive and put that in some place. And then after we're done that, since these people are working mobily, we're going to send a text message to this person and let them know that we created a record, we copied a file, and do anything. So again, coming back to my whole idea here of being able to build workflows without writing code and being able to do these at the speed of thought. So we have that ability to be able to take advantage of that. Okay. Again, you know, looking at the ways you debug and the ways you do different things, we can actually take a look at, you know, the workflow instances to see what's available and what's running. So, you know, here's the external start, and then looking at the different paths. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what I wanted to be able to show you with the abilities of Nintex Workflow Cloud, NWC. Now let me show you some real quick things here as far as how do you purchase this, and you know, what do we end up doing here as far as what are the different things we can do. So one thing I want you to take away from this are the kinds of problems you can solve that might not be in the domain of SharePoint. So you don't have SharePoint, you might not have Office 365, you might just have Google Desk or something, no problem. You can fulfill all these types of business requirements by being able to take advantage of this Nintex Workflow Cloud, NWC. And what's great about it is it's very simple to purchase, because you either can buy Standard Edition or Enterprise Edition, but Nintex Workflow Cloud is included when you buy a subscription. Not only that, everything in the list on the left-hand side is included. So let's say that you want to build some Nintex Workflow Cloud workflows, but then now you realize that you're moving to Office 365. Maybe we want to build a couple forms in Office 365. We can do that. So you get a lot of different support that's all inclusive. So one thing I want you to take away from this, when you purchase this product, it's based on a subscription, and the cool thing about it, it includes everything on the left-hand side. It includes support. It includes the ability to build custom mobile applications. It includes being able to support Nintex Mobile that I was showing you in that one application on my phone, which is a free download. But you know, you pretty much get everything here, and you even get Nintex Hawkeye, which is a data warehousing for storing information as it runs through workflow. So this functionality you only get through Enterprise. So at this point, I pretty much have gone through what I wanted to talk about. One thing I'll do now is, yeah.
No, thanks. There was a quick question that came in. Then if you want to address it.
Okay, I can't see the question. Can you read it to me,
okay.
please?
Yeah, it was one just thinking about. You showed it a little bit, but just clarifying maybe how do you connect to Office 365 or SharePoint Online when using this tool if you don't have the Nintex Office 365.
So, well, okay. So if you have the ability to be able to push and pull information. One great thing about it, as they start adding these connectors and just talking specifically to this situation, is that we can communicate with Office 365 and manage it through the web service calls. So we'll have to make those REST web service calls, which Office 365 supports, but what you'll see in the very short term, you will see a bunch of different connectors like that coming on board to make it a lot easier than having to do a straight HTTP web service call. So again, like I said, this product was had just gone global release about a month ago, and I think when you take a look at this and look at the product feature set, every month you're going to see new connectors added in there and new functionality added in there. So it's in its infancy, but it has a lot of great power as it sits right now to be able to create some really great solutions. Any other questions?
I think there was a reference, you mentioned it, but the SDK coming up?
Oh yeah, so also everything that I was showing you today done through the user interface can also be done. Nintex is going to have an SDK, so you can actually integrate with it through an SDK as well. So for more of the developer side of the house, where you want to do some, down and dirty type of low-level things, you'll be able to do that, as well as being able to call from different platforms to do different things to be able to manage and administer Nintex Workflow Cloud. So a lot of great things are going to be coming up for this product.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Any last comments?
My last comments is anything related to Nintex that you want to find out more about, please go to netwoven.com/Nintex, and you can send us your information and we'll contact you. If there's anything you'd like me to whiteboard in relation to any problem you're trying to solve, my email is alexv@netwoven. It was on the first slide. Please just send me an email and ask me, and we can set up a brown bag or a whiteboard discussion to figure out how this or any other Nintex solution might fit for the problems you're trying to solve. So with that, I really want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to your feedback, and I'll be sending you the slides by the end of day, hopefully by today or tomorrow. Okay? Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Great. Thank you. Have a good day.